everyone, and welcome to Positive Development's panel on autistic parents. We hear a lot about all different corners of the autism and autistic communities all year long, but especially in April. This year, we're doing something interesting. We want to focus on the unique experiences of autistic parents. We're so used to hearing about children. We're not always used to hearing about the unique challenges and strengths and joy that come along with autistic parents. While I am not a parent myself, this is something I've always found incredibly interesting and something that makes me hopeful, excited, and also personally a little bit nervous sometimes about my own future. But thankfully, today we have three absolutely incredible panelists that I am personally very excited to introduce you to and to have the opportunity to help uplift their voices. I'm joined here by Daniel Bowman Jr., Maisie Soetantyo, and Tiffany Hammond. A hearty welcome to each of you, and thank you so much for spending the time with us today and for giving our audience the opportunity to get to learn from each and every one of you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks.
Thank you for having us.
You are so welcome. It is truly my honor. And to get us started with this panel, I want to ask if everyone feels a little bit comfortable sharing a little bit more about themselves, sharing a little bit about your story, and feeling like it's a good time to kick us off. So I'll give each of you a cue to introduce yourself by name as well. So then we're not worried about talking over one another or anything. So to get us started, let's start with Daniel. Would you feel comfortable introducing yourself and sharing a little bit about you and your story?
Sure. Hi, my name is Dan Bowman, and I live out here in East Central Indiana. And I've been here at teaching at Taylor University. I teach English and creative writing. So I'm an autistic person who's in the humanities and in the fine arts. I have two kids. One is 16 years old and a junior in high school, and the other is 12 years old and in sixth grade. And at Taylor, I'm also the faculty advisor to a group called SEND, which stands for Students for Education on Neurodiversity. And many of the students in the group are autistic or neurodivergent, and others are just interested in partnering with us and learning more. And some folks are going into education and various disciplines where it's helpful to understand more about autism and neurodivergence and neurodiversity. So that's been a really great thing. This past year in August, I had a new memoir and essays come out called On the Spectrum, Autism, Faith, and the Gifts of Neurodiversity. And it's just a series of essays about my own life, and I'm sometimes wrestling directly with things to do with autism, and other times just kind of enacting the life of an autistic person through essays about childhood and a place and worship and faith, which is part of my life and community, and a lot of other things. So that's a little bit about me.
Thank you so much for that introduction. Tiffany, would you feel comfortable introducing yourself and sharing a little bit about your story?
Yeah. My name is Tiffany. I'm the voice behind Fidgets and Fries. I'm an autistic mother, advocate, storyteller who uses my own personal experiences with autism and parenting two autistic boys to guide others on their journey. I would say that like my activism is like rooted in challenging the current perception of autism as being this lifelong burden. Also cultivating a community that explores the concept of intersectionality, challenging dominant cultural thinking on matters of race, gender, disability, and also inspiring other thought leaders through storytelling, education, and critical discourse. Yes. Yeah, and that's it. I think. I thought that was good.
Thank you so much. And finally, Maisie, would you feel comfortable introducing yourself and sharing a little bit about you and your story?
Yes, of course. My name is Maisie. I'm the founder of a nonprofit here in San Francisco Bay Area called Autism Career Pathways. And personally, I am the first in my family with a formal diagnosis of autism. And I know that I came from multi-generational, many autistic people in my family. And I work with autistic kids and now with autistic people of different age groups for 3 decades now. It's pretty much something that I feel very familiar about. My special interest has always been autism, human behavior, psychology, and sports watching. I am, I love doing projects, and my projects are usually connected with my community, where through our nonprofit, we really want to figure out how to educate the community at large, outside of the autism and autistic communities, so that we can provide non-deficit model information and invite our community to participate in providing better support for neurodivergent people. So that's me.
Thank you so much. And to help kick off our discussion a little bit further, each of you mentioned a little bit about your experiences as parents, that each of you is autistic and is a parent, whether to autistic children, neurotypical children, or both neurotypical and neurodivergent kids. And given that each of you is public about your autism in some way, whether it's through Maisie's nonprofit work, Tiffany's activism, or Dan's work as an author as well, I found that really interesting. And to ask our next question, I want to actually start with Tiffany and ask, how do we talk about autism with your kids and with your family? What does that look like?
I know for myself, especially in our community, it's a lot of hiding it. A lot of like there's a lot of parents who have children who don't even know they're autistic until they're like 12 or 13, or when something really, really serious happens and their parents happen to know when they were like 6 or 7 and they had diagnoses then. But they just don't share it with their child. And I think that for our family is I don't cover it up. I don't sugarcoat it. I tell them like they're different in more ways than one. And this world is going to inform them of that, whether they want to hide it or whether they're not going to. So I figure it's the best way for them to confront a world that is going to treat them differently anyways, is to have a clear understanding of why they're considered different in the first place. So they definitely have to know their diagnoses. And I feel like that's their best defense against any potential harm, not in that it will like prevent like harm from coming to them, but it's just like, if they have that understanding of who they are and why they behave the way that they do, then they're better able to describe to others who they are, why they do what they do. And if they need to one day, like, express their needs in a way, and the things that they do need, they're able to like put that in a way that they understand and try to get other people to understand that as well. But we started with books, reading some books about autism, reading them together. asking them questions afterwards. How did they feel about this character? How did do they see any similarities between themselves and the characters that we just either read or watched? We watched some films. I used to collect social stories from other therapists that talked about autism. I would also write my own stories because I am autistic. So I would put together my own stories to kind of just like read to them and try to show them that they're not alone, that it's important for them to know that they're, I know that a lot of times when you're at school or you're at somewhere else, you feel like you're by yourself. You feel like you're the only person that feels this way. You're the only person that is this way, and nobody fully understands you. And I wanted them to know that they're not alone, that autism is an integral part of who they are, and it influences every part of their being. And they don't have to be defined by it, but it will play a large part in their lives. And I want them to understand that that's okay, and that I will help them, and we will work very hard to make sure that they have the tools and skills they need to navigate this world as best they can, and also try to maintain a more authentic versions of themselves that they can live with. Because there's a lot of times that I have to do things that I can't quite live with, but I have to do it anyways. But yeah, it's a lot of storytelling, and it's a lot of reflection, and it's a lot of reassuring them that they're not alone, and that they don't have to do this by themselves, that I'm here, that there's a community out there that is willing to help them and understands them, and just making sure that they can maintain some type of connection to other people and to other and to a community. So now, like, they don't see themselves as part of an autism community yet, but I want to keep putting that in their heads, so when they're ready, they know that that's there, and that helps. So yeah.
Thank you so much. And that you just gave me a lot to think about as well. And kind of to keep moving right along, Maisie, how do you talk about autism with your kids? You mentioned that you've worked with autistic kids for the better part of your career and that you were the first in your family to receive a diagnosis.
Yeah. I think I start the process of sharing about autism and autistic expressions just through myself, because I'm very privileged to be able to be a true true autistic person at home en masse. Since even more so since my diagnosis, because I don't want to hide anymore. You know, I've done that for so long, and it was very different to search for answers on behalf of the clients I work with, versus searching for answers for myself in a meaningful way. And it takes time. There's so much to unpack, right? So I want my kids, and of course my husband, to share that journey with me. And so at home, if I need help, I will ask for help. If I need sensory input, like deep pressure, I'll ask for it. And I think normalizing, how we self-advocate at home is how I could normalize the language and help my kids to help me if they can, also respect me, and sometimes maybe give me space, and just do better, like providing understanding to each other. So in my family, the four of us, we're all neurodivergent of different types. So I think that's one way. My daughter helped me set up my Instagram account, actually, 3 years ago? So she follows me on Instagram, and she learns alongside me. And if she has questions, she will ask me. And that's like a fun way. I think her and I are kind of like sharing, and she follows some of my autistic connections on Instagram. So I really like that. And for me, educating neurotypical and autistic youths, that's really important, because my autistic clients, get bullied a lot. And if my kids, my teens, can step up and be there, be present, makes a little difference, to advocate for their neurodivergent peers, I think it would be amazing, in however they want to do it. Build a better community. Autistic teens can also learn how to be allies. I don't want any excuses. Neurodivergent people can also learn how to provide better support at school. So these are, I think, conversations that we have to have at home, like every day. There's not enough conversation at home about how to notice when someone is in distress, and what do you do. There's not enough. Like, parents have to have these conversations every day with their kids, because sometimes what my autistic clients, high schoolers, experience, the way they're bullied, is just heartbreaking. I just don't understand how they can come up with these evil plans to isolate someone. It's just, okay, I need to stop there, because it's just going to go on, because it's very sad and frustrating for me that I think every family should just normalize being different together.
I absolutely love that message about normalizing being different together as a family. And it's also making me personally reflect a little bit on the fact that I grew up with non-autistic, but also at least one neurodivergent parent. So thank you for that reminder. And that honestly did set the tone in my household growing up, is that we're all different, and that's not a bad thing. And to close out this round of questioning, I want to go to Dan and ask how he talks about autism with his family.
Yeah, it's gonna be a little tricky. I'm gonna try to walk a certain kind of line, because to protect my kids' privacy right now, they haven't been public about anything at all, really. And so, again, it's a little bit of a line to walk. However, right before I came here, I was late getting home. I wanted to do this from my office at my house, and I was on campus. I had a little bit of time between the last class that I taught and when I needed to leave to get here on time for this. And a student came in, because the students always come into my office, and it's an autistic student who is struggling with just the regular pressures of the day, and plus a lot of other stuff besides. And so a lot of what I feel like I'm doing right now is helping these young people, 19, 20 years old, college students, come to terms with this all for the first time, with their families and so forth. And so I guess I'll talk maybe a little bit more about that. I did want to reiterate everything that was said, that I was just taking some notes, and I really appreciate all of this. Tiffany mentioned storytelling, reflection, reassurance, and pointing to a larger community that's there to accept folks and help out. And I appreciate all of those points so much. I think those are probably anchor points for me too, especially when it comes to things like storytelling. I mentioned that I have a memoir out, and coming to terms, for me as a writer, as an artist, coming to terms with this meant that I was going to have to tell my story on the page, and that I was going to have to turn it into art. I've got right now a young adult novel, and that's on submission with some publishers around the country. And so I'm thankful for that opportunity, and I'm really hoping that we sell it at some point soon, because the storytelling aspect of it is so important. I think when you, to Tiffany's point earlier, when you can see yourself reflected accurately in a story, in a book or a film or a TV show for the first time, it's so wildly powerful. And I know Haley knows a lot about that, having taught, about autistic representation in media and in the arts and things. So that's huge for me. I really appreciated Maisie's point about normalizing the language of self-advocacy in the home. And that is certainly something that I've had to do. I'm not sure about everybody else in terms of when you arrived at conclusions or formal diagnoses about your own autism. But for me, it wasn't all that long ago, and it was, well into my adult life. And so I had to relearn how to be me and how to talk about it, and how to actually obtain what I needed. And most of the time, it's fairly simple stuff. But once the family understands things like, I need downtime when I get home, I can't launch into a whole bunch of stuff about the school days and the homework and all that just yet. I need my own downtime to reflect on and process whatever I went through today myself before it's almost like that thing on airplanes where they say, in the event of an emergency, put your own oxygen on first before you help the people around you. I need to do that for myself first, to make sure that I'm in the right frame of mind to help my own kids and my whole family. And indeed, we all do have neurodivergence of one sort or another, and we're still working through some of that right now. And I feel like I've learned so much in the last few years from writing about it and being in semi-public spaces anyway, doing a lot of podcasts and a lot of interviews and stuff after the book came out, to talk through it and figure out what it means for me, and better normalize the language of self-advocacy and say, look, it's no different from a physical need, and often the needs are very physical. The things that I need when it comes to being able to even out and be where I need to be emotionally, mentally, physically, for the evenings when I come home, and on weekends and on trips and vacations and all things like that. They know by now that it has a lot to do with structure. If we're going on a family trip and the normal everyday structure of my life is taken away, it's going to be an adjustment no matter how much I prepare for it. And I don't like surprises and all these kinds of things. The sensory experiences and the sensory processing, executive functioning, right on down the list, of all the things that are going to be difficult. And so normalizing that language and talking about that more and more with my own family helps me feel comfortable talking about it in public. It helps me feel better guiding my students through it. And, I'll just say the student that was in my office right before I came to this was wrestling with a lot of anxiety and a lot of, she also, it seems to me, is struggling with alexithymia, and it has all these feelings and is very, very uncertain about the root causes of these things at the moment, and needs to process to begin to understand them. So just enacting that process with a student, and then coming home and using those experiences to inform the home life and the work life and all the other kinds of things that happen. So I hope that makes any sense.
It does, and I thank you for that. Each of you touched a little bit on this component of advocacy, whether it was at home, whether it's at work, or whether it's with students or people within the community. And I found that to be a really wonderful piece of advice to walk away with, is this idea of advocating for ourselves, either at home or anywhere else that we go. And that was something I don't know if I was expecting to take away, but it really made me think more about my next question, which is how being autistic informs our parenting. And it seems that that advocacy component seems to be a huge part of parenting. So to kick us off on this one, I want to start with Maisie asking how being autistic informs your parenting, and what you either want your children to learn, or or the different strategies that you use, or whatever it may be?
Yeah, I would say just continued and built in flexibility. I was very lucky that both of my parents, especially my mom, they were not typical Asian parents uh, who like punished me when I failed all of subjects that had to do with numbers because I have dyscalculia. So I just numbers in any shape or form, and it just never made sense to me. And on top of that, I also have auditory processing challenges. So to multi-process and to comprehend in the classroom setting, um, it was and it is still very, very difficult for me. So school, I guess, was tough to survive for me on top of the social stuff, right? But my parents, I think, just intuitively, they were able to adjust their expectations. They were hovering over me as much as they could, especially for first time. Like the first time I would do something, if I wanted to do it, they would actually come with me. My mom went to my first interview, job interview, actually, and she just showed up. And and then when I got the second round of the interview, they asked me not to bring my mom. That was an example, for example. But I appreciate it. Like my mom was like everything for me. Like she was there for me. She helped me. I do my homework after she came home from work. She was really tired. I had very vivid memories of her sometimes being very frustrated, uh, just spending extra time with me. But just all of that, the way they were with me, raising me and my brother, uh, that's what I think the template, what feels familiar to me as I'm raising my two teens, so I think I'm very forgiving, and I always give people the benefit of the doubt. And yeah, so I think that's flexibility and understanding when you are all neurodivergent. I think it just comes easier, I think, for us because we went through it, and now we're able to navigate, like working with teachers, communicating and giving teachers ideas at the beginning of school year, and at home also, just being aware and supportive.
Thank you so much. And Dan, how does being autistic inform your parenting?
I think I try to focus more on strengths, I suppose, in some ways. I think definitely it's made me more thoughtful, because every day has always felt like a battle for me most of my life, especially when I was in school. When I look back at school and, elementary school and high school, and I think about the things that I went through, um, it just makes me, I hope, more compassionate and more thoughtful as a parent, trying to be in tune with what my kids are going through every day. I tell the story in the book, for example, of a time when, there's the saying that there's no such thing as a untraumatized autistic person, and I tend to pretty much believe that. When I was in fifth grade, and I had a really tough teacher who wanted to intimidate students into behaving well and things like that. And we had the desks with the openings in the front where you put your books and folders and papers and stuff. And this teacher came around behind me out of nowhere at one point, and circled around to, he had looked into my desk from my side and then kind of circled around to the other side and just slammed the desk to the floor. And they called it dumping your desk. And it was a thing that teachers did once in a while back then. And when I was a kid in the 80s, and I don't know that people would get away with that nowadays, but they did back then. And it was his way of trying to say, you need to get on the straight and narrow and be organized and get your act together and everything. In reality, obviously, all it made me do was fear and hate teachers and authority figures. And so it was just a terrible experience for me. I try to be in tune with when my kids go through anything of the sort, whether it's a really dramatic incident like that, or just something very small, that a perception that they got from somebody else, something that somebody said that I know wasn't even necessarily probably meant to be hurtful, but the autistic mind and the neurodivergent mind will obsess over and process and work through these things for a long time. And so I need to be there for them while they're going through that. And I need to take it very, very seriously. I think that's one of the benefits, I think, for me of being an autistic parent is deciding that it's very serious to me. It's very real to me. If there's a small slight at track practice or swim practice or during school or something that felt like a important moment to one of my kids and they need to process it and express it and move on, then I have to treat it with the utmost seriousness and respect and work through it with them. And I understand because I went through that myself. I'm a very I never had a diagnosis as a kid, but I was called oversensitive and lots of other really bad things that I won't say on camera. But let's just stick with oversensitive. Neurodivergent people are necessarily oversensitive. We're built to be oversensitive. Our brain wiring and the way we apprehend the world is such that things don't slide off us like rainwater on a duck's back. They affect us and hurt, sometimes very deeply, things that could be unexpected to a neurotypical. And so for me, it's just about presence. And then it becomes about balancing my own autistic needs, which are sometimes fairly extreme, with the needs of my kids. And saying, okay, if I get home from work early one day, let's say, and I have an hour of downtime, I'll probably be pretty well outfitted if I can have a cup of coffee and something to eat and just a TV show just to take my mind off of everything. I'll be good to help my kids with homework, to help them with struggles and things that happen throughout the day. But I need to balance those things, my needs and theirs, so that I can be fully present to them.
Thank you so much. And to wrap up this question, I want to talk to Tiffany and ask how your autism and being autistic informs your parenting.
I feel like being autistic is it informs like every part of who I am, including being a parent. It allows me to think more deeply about certain things that impact my children or affect my children. And I'm able to look at all these different situations and these different experiences, and I'm able to let it filter through that lens and then see if there's anything that is from my experience as being autistic that I can apply in that area or that I can pull from. Because, I once was a kid who experienced a lot of similar things, and a lot of feelings and a lot of similar situations. And I try to see all these things from different angles that honestly used to overwhelm me to exist in all these different lanes, like parent and wife and woman and autistic and all these other, all these perspectives, and they just kind of like overwhelm me at times. And now I just try to focus on how that can help me in other areas. So I was diagnosed before kids, and then I hid that because there was no groups and there was no neurodiversity movement and there was no love your autistic self. There wasn't any of that. So it was something that I didn't really like face until probably my youngest was probably like 7 or 8. And so that's around the time when I'm trying to like deal with my own life, but then also trying to like parent them, and then start to try to apply my experiences to what they might be going through now. So I'm just looking at them and like, oh, well, maybe they feel like, I feel like I'm looking at it in a different way than a parent who isn't autistic would be looking at something. So it's just like I'm always trying to look at these situations from a different light and a different angle. And it's not always easy, because it's like a lot of times you're just like, you live in this world where it's like the rules feel set in stone, and then if you like deviate from them, then you are disadvantaged in like so many ways. So you're trying to like balance, that. And so a lot of your thoughts, like a lot of those thoughts kind of like seep in there and try to almost take over. So a lot of times I sometimes find myself just wearing this dominant parent hat and not looking at something through like through that autistic lens. And then you just have to like kind of like fix yourself a little bit. You're like, whoa, okay, go back, sit down a little bit, try to think about this from another way. And I think that being autistic allows me to do that a lot more often. Kind of forces you to like see things from different perspectives and different ways. And I think that helps me out a lot. I mean, we trigger each other. So there's a lot of that, so it's trying to like balance helping them get through their needs, and then also trying to like find a way for myself to handle and deal with what I have going on. And sometimes that's difficult, but I feel like I'm at a point in my life where I have somewhat, I'm not gonna say all the way, but somewhat mastered the ability to self-soothe and to find a way to kind of center myself. And that's something that my kids don't know how to do yet. And so I have to find a way to help them get through that, even if that means like shelving a piece of like what I need to get through to, get them through whatever situation it is that they need help getting through. But I think that being autistic definitely helps me in ways that it wouldn't if I weren't. And I'm thankful for that. It's different and it's overwhelming, but I think it helps a lot. And I think that helps. I think that helps us. I think that helps those of us who are parents and also autistic. I think that helps us better able to help other parents as well, because we're able to see all these different perspectives and these different angles and give that insight and give that that guidance and that fresh look at things. It's not, wholly parental or like wholly autistic. It's just like this nice blend of everything. And you don't see that that often. I wish we did. That was like it's like we're here, and then like people don't actually like believe we're here, but we have all these things to like offer and all this advice to like, you know, like help and you know, but I'm I'm hopeful that with, you know, with this video, with this presentation, and with everything else, that they start to see us more, that they start to recognize that there are autistic people that are parents, that are like, I think I tried to Google it one time, and it was just like, it's it's like you see a random few articles out there, but there's not much science, there's not much studies, there's not much like something like, you know, that's like talking to like autistic people that happen to be parents as well. And there needs to be more of that, because I think that we have a unique perspective, you know, and a lot to offer. So I'm hopeful that in the future, in the near future, that there's a lot more of us sharing our stories and our voices, and a lot more people are willing to like listen and have us in their spaces. So yeah.
I hope so too. And that's partly why we wanted to do this panel in the first place, is that this is an intersection we don't often talk about. And what made it really interesting so far listening as well is we talked a lot about the strengths and the joy and how valuable we are as autistic people who happen to be parents. And since we seem to be really smashing that stereotype and those prejudices, I want to actually think about what are those things that we're debunking and ask about the biggest misconceptions of autistic people who, as Tiffany put it, happen to be parents. So I want to start with Dan and ask what, in your opinion, is the biggest misconception about autistic parents?
Wow, it's not something I've thought about really that much before. I guess I would start by just talking about misconceptions of autistic adults in general. I think we're just this still in today's world. I think we're kind of this X factor that people don't understand. And why? I mean, a lot of it has to do with money, probably, because this is America, and you can follow the money, and you'll understand why things happen the way they happen. All the focus. I mean, of course, why was everyone against? Or why are so many people against some of these giant organizations that claim to speak for autistic people? Because they focus on children almost exclusively. And when I say exclusively, it might be okay to focus on the needs of autistic children, but to the exclusion of autistic adults, that's where it gets tricky, because we are here. We don't disappear at the age of 18. We don't disappear, hopefully by the age of 40. And so I'm here, and I'm a living testament to that fact. I think a lot of people just don't understand who autistic adults are, and that we do lead lives. We have marriages and families and kids and careers and all kinds of other things. And so I think we just need to see a lot more representation. I go back to that because I guess as someone who is interested in books and stories and storytelling, it's so critical to me. When I see myself reflected back, the old windows and mirrors things about books. Some books are windows into a new experience that you've never had before. So I'll read a book from an author from a country that I don't know anything about or something, and it's a fascinating window into someone's experience. Other books and stories are mirrors that get held up to an individual where you do see yourself reflected. So let's say, for example, I'm out here in the Midwest. I want to teach some stories that are Midwestern stories that take place on Midwestern farms and things like that. And then some of the daily situations that people see in the stories, they'll read and they'll say, oh, that looks like my grandparents. That looks like me. That looks like the way I grew up. And they'll gain insight into how to live better, I hope. I want to see that for autistic people too. I want to see a whole lot more of it. I see some TV shows coming out here and there. We're gaining more autistic representation on the screen, I think, from the point of view of having autistic actors. I know this new Amazon series has 3 autistic actors. I don't know who is I don't know who's writing this stuff. So you can have people play autistic characters and they're autistic actors, but who's writing the scripts? Who's writing the stories? I don't know. For me, that's a key. I want to be in those spaces because I want to tell people what it is like to be somebody. I might be having the very typical white male, middle-aged, midlife crisis type stuff. Okay. But I'm going to do it in an autistic way. And I don't know what that means because I've never seen it. I've never read about it. I've never seen it at all. And I want to know. I want to know beyond Temple Grandin or Rain Man or all these iconic images, what could it look like? And I want to help shape it. And so I know I'm kind of going off in a different direction, I suppose, but I think people don't understand autistic parents because they don't understand autistic adults and autistic middle-aged people and how we function and what we need and how our needs change. So I'm so glad for so many writers who, and some of whom have become friends. I'm thinking, for instance, of the British writer Catherine May, whose book Wintering had really caught on this past year. And before that, she wrote a memoir called The Electricity of Every Living Thing. And she and I have talked and done some work together. And I thought, man, it's so refreshing to see somebody my age, somebody in their mid-40s who's autistic, has kids, has a marriage, has a job, and learn from them about what it's like, because it's a path that I've never seen blazed before me. And so a lot of times it feels like you're just walking into the darkness and trying to blaze a new path.
Thank you so much. And I think that's a really interesting point as well about autistic adults are essentially misunderstood as well. And now to Tiffany, is there a big misconception about autistic parents that you want to help dispel? You're on mute.
Crap. Okay, I'm off mute now. I was like, good, because y'all couldn't hear me saying like for about 5 minutes. I feel like being a parent and being autistic, I feel like it's unbelievable to so many people. Like, they have it in their head that autism should be like this one certain thing, and then it couldn't be anything else. Like, it can't be something like else. So a lot of times, like, be it a parent or a professional or even a stranger or something, they just they'll look at me and they'll say, you don't appear like this, you don't seem like this, you must be higher functioning, or all of these things. I feel like I'm just this big walking like contradiction to the science that they know behind autism, and they can't accept that it's different to them. It doesn't align with what they have seen. And then they match me against a child. And so I won't ever win if you put me against a child. I'm an adult. I have like 3 decades on this child. I've had time to learn a lot of different things, because humans are lifelong learners. We don't stop. It doesn't matter who we are, doesn't matter our neurotype. We're always constantly learning and adapting and growing. I've had a lot of time to get from where I was, which was a lot like the child you're matching me up against right now, to get to where I am right now. And that's a lot. That's something that a lot of people can't fully understand or accept, because it's not something that they're familiar with. So to like bring it back to the points that Dan was making, it's that there needs to be more representation of what autism is for so many different people. It needs to have a wide range of experiences. It can't just be the same type of autism that we see. And it can't be extreme in one way. It can't be like documentaries of the most highest achieving of individuals among us, and then it can't just be the opposite of that, where it's like you just showing news programs devoted to like those who require like the highest supports and stuff. It has to be that story, the other story, and everything in between. It has to be all these different bodies from all these different backgrounds and all these different experiences, and so that we not only feel like we're being represented, we're being able to see ourselves in all these different forms of media, but that the general public is able to see us in those ways as well, because true representation is like an invitation to the human experience, especially one that's different than yours. And that is a beautiful thing, but we don't see much of it. So then that's how I'm going out and I'm having my thoughts and my perspectives and the things that I say, I'm having it dismissed by everybody. Not just not just other parents. I get dismissed by other autistic people too, who feel like, oh, you're leaning too far this way, or you get it from another, like get it from a parent. Oh, you're leaning too far this way, and I'm like, I'm not leaning anyway. I'm just combining both of these experiences together, and it just looks different to you. And we need more representation, and we need more stories like ours. We need more visibility. We're not visible right now. It's like you hear us a little bit, but people don't really like see us. They don't really know us. They don't really understand us fully. And that's what we need more of, so that when I tell someone, yeah, I'm also autistic, like my kids, they don't sit there and the first thing that's out of their mouth is either I'm sorry or you don't look like that, and then pretty much dismiss the rest of the things that I have to say. And that for me is what is really challenging, because I don't fit what they think autism is. And to be honest with you, how do you blame them? Because that's what you see. I mean, that's what I see all the time. It's like the same type of autism all the time, everywhere. And if you see that enough and you see a lot of it, then that is what you're going to start to believe autism is. It's always in the extreme. Like, and so we just need, like Dan said, we need more representation, and that will help tremendously with the misconceptions around what it's like to be both autistic and to be a parent. And that is what I think that is what's going to help a lot, because it's weird, because even a lot of parent groups that I'm in cannot fully understand the autistic parent. Like, that's just not a possibility that could just ever happen. And then they turn around and they write posts about their children having all of these urges and stuff. So it's like, yes, we're human, so we're capable of doing these things. And I didn't know how far I was supposed to go in the, so I was trying to like self-censor, but we're human, and we have these things, and we have these needs, and we have these urges, and yes, children come from that, so it's like, your child is also capable of this. So I don't know how you can't believe that they can grow up one day and have children and have relationships and have these things. So it's even in parents that can see that their children have these thoughts and these wants to have friends and wants to have relationships and wants, that want to have a girlfriend or want to have a boyfriend or want all these things, they still can't wrap their head around someone like me who has the husband and has the children. It's still like they're still not quite on board with it yet. And so, yeah, it just needs to be a lot more representation, and not just sticking bodies that weren't there initially. You don't just go and just stick diverse bodies in different spaces. Like, you have to, like, not only put those bodies there, they have to be given the room and the space to share and tell their own stories. Just like Dan said, we have to write that stuff, we have to act that stuff, we have to be the costume designers, we have to be the camera person. You have to, from start to finish, like, put all of these beautiful people who have all this great experience and skills and knowledge and stuff, and put them in those spaces so that those films and those shows and those documentaries and those books and those and whatever else is put out into the world can be a more authentic representation of what it's like to be autistic in all its forms, be they just adult or be they a parent or whatever, But yeah.
I think I just want to honestly have a piece of media on everybody here and be like, look at the stuff that we've made, because every single story that we've been telling has gotten me so excited. And just really quickly, Maisie, would you be so kind to tell us what one of those big misconceptions that you want to help bust is about autistic parents or adults more broadly?
There are so many undiagnosed autistic adults, and people don't know what they don't know, right? I'm gonna speak about the autism myth in the context of autistic parents trying to advocate on behalf of their autistic children in educational setting, because that's what I do. I go to IEPs, and it's very hard to be in one divided room where it's like everybody's talking using a different language, two different languages, right? As an autistic person, I know that my communication, the way I communicate, it's definitely, there are subtle differences about it, because that happens to me and my husband, where we're really trying hard to have a discussion, but it's just going, it's like, what? It just keeps going around and around, and it just would leave us feeling frustrated, right? So it's, I think, when you are in a relationship with an autistic person, doing that dance, figuring out that dance, it's still challenging, because we communicate differently, even though the intention may be the same, right? So I think autistic parents are often seen by in like in school settings, as you know, autistic, oh, that parent is a troublemaker, or it's just so controlling or so nosy, want to know too much about things, asking all these questions. I think part of that comes from the feeling of fight or flight that we have carried since we were young. And we don't want our children to go through that. It hurts. It doesn't leave you, you know, those kind of feelings, you know, it gives you scars. And I think there is a solution to this, where I wish that in an IEP situation, you know, where we're all on the same team, but we change our best practices to be able to provide better clarity, because the goal is to help the student to be more successful. Everyone has the same goal, but we communicate differently. You know, how do we translate that? What is the manual for autistic people and neurotypical people, so that we could communicate with much less misunderstanding, if you want to call it that, right? So direct questions, you know, everything can be done ahead of time in writing. For me, in bullet points, because I have a hard time reading long documents, but I can understand bullet points. You know, there's just so much more that can be done differently when it comes to advocating for autistic students in a different way. And autistic parents can definitely, you know, make the process better if the other side is also willing to come forward and start from a compassionate beginning. That's where everyone has to come into the room with a much better mindset, if you want to call it that, because a lot of times the goal is the same, but it's just lost in translation, and it's very frustrating, I think. So I see oftentimes that the autistic clients I work with, they are already labeled as difficult parents to work with. And the moment you enter the room, you can feel, my blood pressure goes up very, very quickly, because the vibe is already, you can't advocate for a young person if this is the vibe you're going to be sharing with each other, you know. So that's my point.
Thank you so much to each of you on that point, and for allowing me to ask a question that I wasn't planning on asking. And to that effect, each of us has talked a lot about representation, and that we, as panelists and as human beings for that matter, all have unique experiences with our identities, whether it's our autistic identity, also at the intersection of race, gender, other disabilities or forms of neurodivergence, our faith, our geography, our culture. That list goes on. We're also parents. You've mentioned if you've had relationships with a co-parent, or you're a wife, or you're a husband, you get the idea about these identities. And I want to ask us if there is any specific components of intersectionality, or how all of these experiences come together in your personal story that you would like to talk about. And to get us started, I would love to begin with Tiffany, who did mention a little bit about this in her introduction.
Again. Okay, I got it. I did it again. Yeah, intersectionality. That's like my jam. So it's like let's see, like, okay, so intersectionality, honestly, it's just it's the concept of it's a concept of oppressed identities intersecting and then creating a new entirely new complex oppressed identity. So it's not enough to just say that I'm Black and I have that identity that's working against me in a lot of ways, and then I have and it's not enough to just say that I'm autistic, and I have that identity that works against me in a lot of ways, and on their own they can ride their own little separate lanes. and still be pretty difficult lives to live. But then you have them too, and they come together, right? And so it's the intersections of those two. So Black together with being autistic, and then it creates an entirely new experience that has to be explored on its own. Explored as something that's completely separate than being just Black or being just autistic, because there's different things and different layers that come with each of those experiences. And so I talk about that a lot because a lot of times I don't experience disability quite the way others do. And so I always felt left out of the conversations. I always felt alone and misunderstood. And it was a lot of frustration and a lot of pain and a lot of anger. And it's a lot of it was a lot of work and a lot of exhaustion on my behalf. I don't think that society as a whole has a firm grasp on what marginalized communities generally go through. And the disability community is no exception. And in many ways, they perpetuate a lot of what goes on in general society. So there's a lot of misunderstanding. So a lot of the things that the autistic community as a whole fights for or advocates for it's not all that impactful for me, because it's not like a life that I know and I live. So it's very challenging to navigate advocacy in that way, because it's you're stronger in numbers. And so when you have that group in that community, and they're on that same page, and they're marching in that same direction, and they have a game plan, and you know, and their grassroots is pretty strong, then you're a force. But that's not the deal here. It's very divided, and it's not very together. And so those little parts and those pockets that are very influential and very loud, they push for things that don't resonate with a lot of BIPOC autistic people. And so we're drowned out and we're overlooked, and we're dismissed, and we're not really fully heard. And it's a lot of misunderstandings. And that is generally what intersectionality tends to try to rectify. It's trying to show those who might not know or might not understand that these are very unique and highly complex identities that we carry that intersect with one another, and that they have to be given the individual attention that they deserve and that we require that they have. Because if we just continue to let our needs and our concerns be folded in with the majority, then we're always going to be lost. It's always going to be, they're going to just continue on as they continue on. And that was a lot of the frustration that I was getting in the groups and stuff. It was a lot of, no, let's not focus on this. Let's not focus. Well, I don't think it's a race thing. Let's not focus on that. Let's just do this. Let's focus on this, and this will help all of us. It doesn't do it like that. That thing doesn't trickle down. Like these doors didn't open, because you ignored what I was saying, and that happens in a lot of these circles, and like even in within feminism as well. It's like a lot of these major, movements, be it disability, be it feminism, be it environmental. It's like they co-opt these different parts of us, and then they kind of dismiss the rest and discard the rest. So like with feminism, or they'll just like co-opt my womanhood and then just neglect that I experience life differently as a Black person. And so it's always looking like they're just addressing one part of me and not the whole of me. And I experience all these different things. And that's what intersectionality seeks to address. And that's kind of what I talk about a lot of, like a whole lot. and it's always been so interesting to me to be in a space that has this paradigm such as neurodiversity, and yet they consistently drop the ball on intersectionality. And that's kind of what's incredibly frustrating to me, because they both neurodiversity and intersectionality tend to make the unseen seen by coming together and looking at all these different ways we experience life, and all the different ways that we are, the way that our privileges intersect with our oppressions, and all these things. You feel like they would work together, and they don't. They seem like they're just riding these different lanes, and that's also what's incredibly frustrating. And that's something that I hope that in the future, that as more people are, because I know when I first started talking about intersectionality, it was like, I don't know what this girl's talking about. I don't want to follow her. Screw her. DM, 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 DM all the time. Like wow, 18 months ago, whew, like life's changed. And so like more people appear to be more welcoming and more open to exploring this concept in depth. And I am excited about that. And I am hoping that it continues to trend more and more. But yeah, I'm hoping that we explore more of that in the future, because if we help those who have the most oppressed intersections, then we're helping all of us. And I'm hoping that this grows, and I see it growing, and I just hope that it continues to grow, and that there's more people that want to learn about it and want to help more and do more. And if they don't fully understand it and everything, I'm here. Yeah.
Thank you. And I'm so glad that you taught us more and are so gracious with sharing your experience. Maisie, do you have anything that you would like to add?
Well, being an Asian person, I really want to figure out a way that parents of autistic children in Asia will be able to advocate for their autistic children differently. Because right now, autistic kids are still hidden. And I firmly believe if we're going to build a better community, you got to get your house in order first. You got to help your child not just label the child as an autistic person, but also guide your child so this child will know fully what it means to live as an authentic autistic person. Because I think diagnosis without acceptance, it's really hard, and if you hide your child and you don't want to take your child out to experience life in the community because you're afraid of the judgment and so on, then that child will grow up just like that and will have no place in the community. So I think that what does it mean to be inclusive? That starts from your home, how you have difficult conversations, how you model respect, and what it means to include other people. That has to start. That is the first step, I think, and then it'll just grow. I realized that convincing companies, shops in the community who are not touched by autism is hard. I mean, I'll mention about my project later, but at the end of the day, all of us are here in this space because we're autistic and we're doing work in the, within the autism community, but the world is a really big place. Those people outside of the two circles are the ones that we have to really educate, influence, because otherwise that rate of over 85% of autistic college graduates are unemployed or underemployed. It's never going to change. So I think we need to have the right kind of conversation. Instead of pointing fingers here, so, judging other people, make yourself accountable, as a member of a society, to do something, to learn. If you don't know, you learn. I learned from Tiffany lots. I read her posts over and over again because I want to know, everybody should have that kind of mindset. If you don't know or something feels uncomfortable, you keep an open mind and you learn, you ask questions, you change the culture within each company. Forget hiring autistic people. Take care of autistic people, neurodivergent people who are already working within your space, so we still have a lot of work to do.
That we do. Dan, any thoughts that you would like to add to this conversation?
Not a lot. I will say just really quickly, when people talk about like the intersection of Christian faith and autism, that's something that I work at that particular intersection, but it's not about marginalized identities. It's more about just how to be autistic in the church. That is something that I had been asked about a lot, and so that's my book came out of that to some extent. And it's an area that I still, I get notes and direct messages and emails and stuff from pastors and churches who read the book and who were excited. I do get excited about that because if there's one area, like the American Protestant church, that can grow in this and need some voices to speak to them about the autistic people in their congregation and so forth. That's great, and it's a great privilege to be able to do that sometimes. But to me, it's more important right now to keep learning and growing. I've got students who are autistic and queer and people of color and lots of other intersecting identities that are not being spoken into and responded to in the ways that would be most useful and beneficial to them. I can't begin to address any of that stuff myself. I don't have the lived experience, and I'm fine recognizing that. So I want to just keep amplifying voices of people who can speak into those spaces.
And I think that's a perfect answer as well, is that's what we're trying to do here with today's panel, is continue to amplify voices. And that's something that I hope that if you are following along or listening, that you feel confident about, that we are able to listen to voices and experiences and lived experience that we might not have. So to help close us out, and since I know that I've learned a lot, and I hope that our viewers and folks here at Positive Development and beyond continue learning more, I'm going to ask each of you to be shameless and plug your work and let us know what you're working on and how we can stay in touch with you and follow along. So to kick us off in our closers, before and after that, we're going to just wrap up with a quick little thank you for everyone and what we can be doing. So Maisie, how can we stay in touch with you and what are you working on?
Okay, so we just launched the Better Community Sensory Inclusive certification for businesses and organizations. So we launched that last month, and there was a process where businesses are given, to me, a very interesting collection of resources, short videos and one-page a resource to learn more about what is autism, what is communication differences, and what is sensory processing differences. So those three areas. And they're also given a sensory scanning and accommodation checklist that they can print out and walk around their business space so they can think about how that they may be able to become a more neurodivergent, welcoming business space. So that's rolling. That's the process. We have to check to make sure that they're actually implementing this accommodation. So there's definitely a process that we have created. And I put this together with a team of neurodivergent people, including non-speaking individuals, as well as people with mobility restrictions. So I'm really excited about it. So if anyone has a favorite spot they shop at in the community and they're already open about accommodating you, introduce them to at Better Community Certified on Instagram, and hopefully they'll get certified. And all these videos we collect over time will hopefully show, it'll just continue to grow. Like, how do you accommodate neurodivergent people if you have a cafe, libraries, bookstore, and so on. So that's my latest project. And Autism Career Pathways, our website is autismcareerpathways.org. So we're building a platform for mentors at workplaces. So again, is the same concept of short videos showing mentors, people at work, how to screen, to do onboarding and support neurodivergent people. So we're not talking just the entry point. We're talking about, really figuring out how to do everything in-house as a company. So that's in the works. I think that's all. And for parents of autistic kids, my Instagram account is just my name at Maisie Soetantyo. And then I have another one at Autism Career Pathways on Instagram that has a ton of autistic people sharing their career and work. I think it's so much fun for autistic youths to go in there and see what other people are doing, and then at Better Community Certified. So that's how you can find me.
Thank you, Maisie. And now to Dan. What are you working on? Is there anything you want to share with us? And how can we stay in touch with you?
Yeah, so I always have these two sort of strands of my professional life, which are writing, writing and teaching. And so, as far as the writing goes, I'm trying to sell a young adult novel right now, and what I'd really love, what I kind of dream or fantasize about, is working with an autistic editor at a publishing house. I think that'd be the coolest thing, because I think they would understand the rhythms and the dynamics of the stories. I think that'd be a really cool thing to do. So I'm I'm on Instagram and Twitter, both at the same handle, which is just at Daniel Bowman Jr., just as it appears on the screen here. And I love to meet people. I love especially to meet autistic people with different ranges of experiences, because I just learn and grow so much from them. In the teaching space, really where I'm at right now and what I want to do a lot more of, it's funny. I just had a perfect example of this just this afternoon. So I taught a class on poetry writing, which is one of the things that I do. And it's a good class, and I feel like I can add value in the classroom, and I feel like a pretty decent professor most of the time. But then afterward, I hear a little soft knock on my door, and it's an autistic student that I've been having lots of long conversations with, and she needed a space to come that was quiet and had better lighting than most of the spaces on campus, and had some fidgets and stim toys available and things like that. And then just to talk through and process all the things that are going on in her life. And I love that so much. And it's such a privilege and an honor to be able to do that. That I look at my day and I'm like, people would think that being a professor means, putting together some fancy notes and standing at a lectern and, teaching. But it's much more for me about sitting in quiet spaces with people who need to reflect and be validated and affirmed as autistic young people who don't feel affirmed by our world and often feel at odds with it. So that's what I want to do more of. That's what I want to learn more about. That's what I want to get better at. I want to. Somebody told me a couple of weeks ago, I was talking with a friend I hadn't spoken to in a long time, and she said, you could have a consulting business, go to colleges and say, well, show me your student group about neurodiversity. Show me the autistic kids. And I wish I could do that, and represent their needs to the people in the administration and help advocate for them, because they are in a position. I have a little bit of power in my position and they don't. They're young and they're students. So I want to keep advocating and being able to do that on my own campus and perhaps even elsewhere.
Thank you. And finally, Tiffany, is there anything that you're working on or that you want to share with us so everyone can follow along and stay in touch with what you're doing in your activism and advocacy?
Dang, I did it again. You can find me on Facebook at Fidgets and Fries. You can find me on Instagram at Fidgets and Fries. Well, there's a period in between each word, so Fidgets period and period fries. I also have a Patreon. I think I'm searchable with Tiffany Hammond. It's all donation based, starting at $1, and that's access to everything. And I do a lot of work on there. I got a book deal not too long ago, so I'm writing a children's book. That is like this big giant love letter to my oldest, who's non-speaking. So I hope I'm done with writing that soon. But that has been a journey and a process, and I cannot wait until it's done and I can share it with the world, and hopefully it's well received. But yeah, I have a lot more different like writing things that I'm doing, more panels. I did a lot of courses last year that helped teach law enforcement how to address people with disabilities. I hope to do more of that this year as well. And yeah, that's what's going on with me.
Thank you all so much for taking the time to join us for this crucial conversation about autistic parents and going beyond just when we talk about children. Thank you all to our panelists, each and every one of them. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Maisie. And thank you, Tiffany. And also a huge thank you to Positive Development for agreeing to host this critical conversation, and to you who might be listening at home for tuning in. And I hope that not just in April, but all year long, we continue to amplify autistic voices. Thank you again and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.